Our final speaker of this session and the entire two-day event is Michele Pasca di Magliano of Zaha Hadid Architects. Michele specializes in residential-led and high-rise development, working also on a variety of exhibition schemes, as well as selected furniture and interiors products. Michele, the mic is yours.
Thank you, Hussein, for the introduction and the grateful invitation to the Rumble Design Excellence Forum. It's a pleasure to be here and introduce to you a little bit of our office, Zaha Hadid Architects. And what do? We're an employee-owned company. We've had a gift from Zaha Hadid back in 2016. And we're a collective of individuals, architects, designers, all passionate about design and architecture. We're lucky enough to work globally. As you know, we collaborate with some of you guys in different locations around the globe, spanning really from Australia to North America to Europe, which is our motherland and where our main office is. And a significant part of our work is actually nowadays in the Far East, in China, Singapore and the region, and Southeast Asia region. But what I would like to say before talking about the projects we do is actually what motivates us and why we do them, and why we think that architecture has a link with the way society is organized. And in a way, architecture hasn't moved much over the years and over the generations, has certain geometries, certain design languages, certain social structures has stayed in place throughout the centuries. And this fascination kept going and was picked up by modernist architecture and was kind of decoded into what you would call, let's say, functionalist architecture, where we try to fit everything to departments and boxes and really try to make our life quite organized by architecture. And let's say there was an utopian vision of a city organized with such a rigorous architecture. But then there is the evidence that something that was considered really kind of an avant-garde vision for future city became the reality of the city of today. And that reality really moved away from that rigor and that organization and became, on the opposite side of things, almost as a paradox, something quite chaotic. And I think that is where we started to realize that society nowadays is far more complex than what you can put into a box, into a category, and has far greater demands. And from that point of view, thinking about architecture just in terms of responding with iconic buildings and great design, sometimes just not enough. Because more and more, there is this kind of self-canceling effect where architectural icons get overlaid over other icons, and in the end you end up with a kind of monotonous continuation of kind of urban sprawl, where you can't even tell whether we're looking at Tokyo, we're looking at Moscow, we're looking at London. And one of the few things that actually helps us recognize that this picture is indeed London is things that is the only natural element in there, and it's the River Thames, which actually leads to where we're going with this. We're going with the idea that we actually can break away from some of the rigor of modernism and introducing a new rigor, which is far more powerful, far more malleable, and can really respond to a much more complex need of contemporary architecture, contemporary society, where we build buildings to enable the future, to enable life to flow, to prosper, to react, where different systems, different colors, different elements actually can be combined with each other can overlay, can actually feed off each other, and then let's say the human being living on it obviously adapts and finds almost like a blueprint for civilization to happen on. And this idea of living in symbiosis with nature is something that has been there in architecture for many, many years, and it was fairly successful until we tried to control nature, and we didn't let nature actually drive architecture. And so when we talk about the contemporary society, when we talk about the kind of the level of networking that we're currently facing, we really need to look at the ability of natural systems to actually organize very, very complex phenomena. And there is from our point of view, there is a great fascination in actually understanding these elements, understanding these forms, and moving beyond some kind of prescribed solutions for different challenges, but really looking at location focus responses, where we're actually looking at specific areas around the earth, specific cities, specific challenges, specific needs for flow of people, for aggregation of people, and how we're going to help them to actually come together and participate in the contemporary social life. This could come in as an airport, as a museum, as a restaurant, as a place of work, place of cultural building, exhibition, or even a residential project. And obviously then that can kind of move beyond the individual building and be brought over to the idea that we don't try to focus on the single individual elements, but we actually try to create almost like recipes for different problems and different architectural projects. So the challenge becomes the starting point, but then the project becomes a seed that then mutates according to different, let's say, local parameters. And this allows us really to generate a great range of solutions. And I think it says something about the level of participation that we have within the company in the design process, where everyone actually has the opportunity to kind of come up with ideas and solutions and brainstorm off each other to actually create a great range of diversity of possible solutions. Some of the initial projects with this really came into place was this Guangzhou Opera House is our first venture into China. It's a cultural building where we were inspired by nature and by the shapes of nature on the sea. And we designed these elements with a mouse, with a computer system, with 3D printing, quick modeling, mouse to model to hand sketches, and internal design presentations where we actually come together as a team and we actually use our own collective expertise as a 500 strong practice to actually give each other ideas, possible solutions, and the best possible fit to our own proposals. Some projects may be unusual and unexpected, and yet they broaden up the definition of what architecture can be and can do, and obviously can also broaden up the perception of a city where specific projects, like in this case in Seoul, become kind of almost the symbol of a new era for the city of Seoul, of rejuvenating the Dongjuan area on the day and the night scene, becoming the center of the new fashion district for Seoul, and the area where actually most of the photo shoots, most of the display for the production of this fashion district is actually taking place. Nowadays, the company has progressed, and a lot of this development is really bottom up. What we really say is that we want to absorb what society throws at us. We want to challenge on one end the builders and the construction industry to actually move away from certain procedures and certain repetitive processes, and at the same time you want to embrace the digital revolution. We want to embrace the robotic revolution, which is great generator of new possibilities. So we've been going through a lot of in-house experimentations, trying to use new ways of designing, digitalizing, and bringing architecture to life. A lot of it gets done through quick projects like pavilions, but also larger scale elements, where we also rethink, not only we rethink the way we design and produce elements, but actually we can, like in the object on the left-hand side, we can actually use the immense technological advancement of robotic printing to just use materials in the most effective way. So really reduce the cost of basic materials, reducing the weight of the elements we produce, and bring it down to zero things like transportation costs, packaging costs, or excessive material that then needs to be removed from buildings. One of the recent challenges we've been playing with, and we've been challenged with from our staff, was actually the idea of, especially during the recent years, architecture having its own life, even without coming to full fruition of the construction. And this idea of the metaverse as a place that we can design for its own digital fruition, it's something we've been using on different levels. On one end, to help us create projects and visualize projects before they get built, but also, like in this case, to actually get input from future buyers, future users of our projects, where they can actually go in and customize. So in this case, that's a project where you can actually go in and customize pieces of facade. You can actually customize size of rooms, and people can really kind of pre-select what it will get built down to the user. So breaking down that kind of developer to architect discourse and actually extending that down to the end users. And on the other hand, kind of creating architecture as an array of possible systems that can be assembled again in a digital environment that then gets purely utilized by avatars in a kind of quasi-alternative space, which is just an extension of our current life nowadays. Going back to the idea of the designs we do, there is certain principles and certain elements that we actually try to establish, and they became a kind of a link throughout all our projects. And these links are really to do with what I call volumetric articulation, so that buildings can do different things as you get to different levels. They can actually be part of a larger system. So you have differentiation and repetition within buildings, and then we take a lot of attention in what is the common spaces where people come together. We really want to encourage those areas, whether it's outside or inside the building, creating internal voids, which encourages a sense of awareness, a sense of understanding what's going on different levels of a building, and having a perception of the outside world from within, from the inside. And sometimes these voids can even kind of literally go through the buildings and across, and connecting two different areas of the outside and reframe them. The very, very first project I will talk about today is a project close to you in Singapore. It's master plan that is partially completed nowadays, where really what we tried to do at the time was really trying to reimagine a piece of the city as an extension of nature, and not really just seeing kind of architecture coming in with a rigid grid establishing itself, but actually creating a second nature for occupation. That was a project that was actually designed almost 20 years ago. Nowadays, we have a new similar scale, large master plan, which is currently under construction in Chengdu in China. And in this case, what we did is we wanted to create a second nature, and we wanted to create a design system that could respond to different needs and different uses, from landscape to buildings to towers to residential to offices. And we've been using a lot of analysis methods to kind of test the design and to inform the design, to make our design, let's say, more intelligent, thinking about future uses and how this system of ellipses in this case can actually be enriched and be populated by, in this case, different areas of landscaping, sport facilities, wet areas, and then going down to buildings. And you can see how this is then imagined to be populated by the future users. So we used some kind of profiling for different people that would inhabit the master plan and thinking about their day life in the office. How would they come in? What would they do? What would they need? And that creates then a whole scenario game of how this whole master plan will come into play. And this cluster of buildings kind of comes together towards the center and towards the height, and then some of the recent kind of construction pictures of the project, and the project with the phase 1 actually recently completed the phase 2 and 3 with a concrete topped up and the facades going up, and the following phases 4 to 5 and 6 actually under construction as we speak. Another project where we used technology to actually respond to needs was this King Abdullah Petroleum Studies and Research Center in Riyadh, building for Saudi Aramco. And in this case, one of the big challenges from us was actually trying to create a late platinum building in the middle of the desert in Saudi. And the response from the team was really just to study the microclimate of the oasis and creating these buffer spaces, which are small courtyards, which are the areas, highly sheltered areas where the sun actually doesn't permeate and where the temperature is slightly lower than the outside temperature. So we can actually kind of insulate the building, then create this kind of sheltered courtyards. And then from there, that's where we collect air to cool the individual buildings. You can see also the way the shading and inclination is studied actually helps maintaining the sun out of those spaces. And on the totally different scale of our interest in projects, this is something that is a building in Oxford that is for the university, and it won a prize for conservation. And we found that, in a way, it's ironic and very interesting how it was appreciated that the best way to preserve actually the St. Anthony's College was not to replicate the kind of the English heritage style of the housing accommodation that is in there, but actually creating something that is totally different, at the same time highly respectful of the existing, almost disappears behind this kind of blurred mirror face, and obviously providing the facilities for the students with a large openings to engage with the outdoors and the gardens. Some more shots of the Guangzhou Opera House. We talked about it earlier. This is really the idea of an opera house where the indoor becomes the outdoor, and then you're back into nature when you're entering the house itself and the concert hall itself. The way complexity can help us resolve some of the challenges of complex network society of today is beautifully and elegantly demonstrated with the Baku project, where we have different boxes of program. It's actually 3 different programs together: a cultural center, a library, and a theater, and then just a gentle roof that kind of undulates and covers over these different zones. So actually the flexibility of this complex architecture really allows us to express the landscape, express the building as a form, but at the same time accommodate seamlessly different programmatic needs. So building that can be used 24 hours days, 7 days a week for different user groups. And some of the projects we're currently working on, where we're actually looking at new ways of combining office spaces with common facilities and linking different departments. In this case, for the Infinitus Plaza in Guangzhou, where we have an 80-meter long bridge that actually connects different parts of the building, bringing this idea of the complexity and the richness that can bring to a project, both to the inside atrium and to this facade, actually helps screen the sun off. A recently completed project in Beijing, where we had a very tall atrium, really working on this idea of interior connections and intercommunication, and a new take on the same theme, which is the Oppo headquarters in Guangzhou, where we have 3 different bubbles kind of nested and connected to each other and wrapped by this common building. So in a way, this idea of the different program being kind of sealed by a single geometry. More recently, we've been involved in a project where we actually were asked by the city of Shenzhen to look at the idea of landscape coming up and the public facilities coming up, not just on the podium, but the mid-levels of the building. So opportunities to then create sky bridges and tall connections between these 2 super tall towers, and additional functions and facilities to the city. And in here, we also brought in a lot of our studies on facade, orientation, ventilation, distance from the sitting place of the people to the facade. So a lot of intelligence in the planning of the buildings themselves, to the point that we then moved on to the simulation of the users. And actually, we started bringing the users back into the project, where the individual head of departments and staff members can actually perceive the building as it's getting designed and kind of feedback on their easiness to actually navigate through the space and find their way through the new workplace. And obviously, there is much more. I hope we're going to be having an opportunity to do that in the future conference, to talk about the projects we're currently working on the drawing board.